Hello, everyone. This is Ernie Humphrey, the CEO of Treasury Webinars. I would like to welcome everyone to our webinar today, the Social CFO, Leading Across and Beyond the Enterprise. Before we dive in, I want to thank my strategic partner for today's webinar, Tapalti. They certainly share my strong commitment to thought leadership and also have a commitment to impacting the career success for their customers. I'm going to work with them a lot more this year and educate you a lot more about the future Office of Finance. This topic is near and dear to my heart because I sincerely believe that the successful CFO in today's world and going forward needs to be social. So before we really dive in again, let me offer you a few housekeeping items. If anyone's interested in receiving a copy of the presentation today or would like a certificate of attendance, for today's webinar, please send an email to Ernie@treasurywebinars.com. Again, that's Ernie@treasurywebinars.com. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop those questions in the questions area of your GoToWebinar control panel. I'll do my best to get to those during the webinar. If not, I will follow up with you directly after the webinar today. And so again, on the social CFO is really a concept that I think I came up with about 2 years ago. And the reason this really became top of mind to me was that I kept seeing obviously all these surveys about the evolution of the role of the CFO. And what it really comes down to me is that the CFO is expected to impact performance across the enterprise. And so not only optimizing performance within finance, but also beyond finance. And so in order to do that, you have to have, I would say, collaborative skills. So I call those social skills. And most finance leaders, certainly in my generation, were not born with these social skills. And so I think it's important that we invest in these soft skills. And we'll go through some research results as well. But what we see from CFOs and CEOs, it was what they're really looking for a lot more than maybe even 10 years ago were these soft skills. And there's definitely an art to it. Even if you're an outgoing person, there is an art to collaboration. So again, I'm excited. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go through a little bit of survey results, CFO priorities, see what those look like. We're going to talk about a little bit more about what a social CFO is. And then we'll talk about, as a social CFO, how do you leverage your social skills to empower your finance team to deliver value? And then how do you collaborate beyond finance to impact company-wide performance? And then we're going to talk about how do you collaborate beyond the enterprise? And so I think that's something I came up with last year, beyond the enterprise, not only within the walls of your company, but certainly today in our world, especially CFOs are really charged with owning technology. And so in our world today, a lot of us have multiple ERP systems, multiple cloud-based applications, and we need to be able to collaborate with our tech partners, but also, of course, in funding the growth of our business as well, but also with our peers, right? Because we all need to stay on top of our games. And I think a lot of us look to do that with our peers, our treasury and finance leaders. So we need to, so how do we build our brand with our peers? How do we collaborate with them as well? As always, a lot of content, fast and furious. So again, if you're interested in receiving a copy of today's presentation, please let me know. A lot of these things we're going to go to at a very high level. I'll try and give you references within the presentation if you want to take a deeper dive, but obviously, as always, happy to speak with you offside the call. Connect with me on LinkedIn if already. So I just like to take a quick peek, like the benchmark. So in navigating 2022, we have a report from Deloitte taken at the end of last year. And this honestly would have made me fall out of my chair a couple of years ago. And so top priorities, CFO, talent, labor. Dramatic pause there, right? That's incredible to me. And so as we look at talent and labor, what does that speak to me? What are we talking about here? The talent, we have to have the right talent. We need to engage that talent, right? How do we engage that talent? Well, we have to build connections with our folks. We have to become vested in the professional development of our staff and employees. You can say in your mind, you don't have time, and I could say to you, you better make time. And so we're going to talk about how you do this. Of course, we see growth, but at the end of the day, growth is all about having engaged people that enjoy what they're doing, understand their value to the company. And so growth means impacting performance across the enterprise. And so as a CFO, one of the ways that we do that I see is we optimize technology across the enterprise, but we need to understand what our departmental leaders need in terms of technology to mitigate the time that's spent on non-value add activities across the enterprise. And when we do that, that's really what is going to funnel growth and our competitive advantage. Again, there's a hyperlink down there, the study by Deloitte, CFO Signals. So I get a lot of enjoyment out of reading that, staying on top of my games. And you'll also find some interesting CFO blogs and research on the Tipalti website as well. So let's talk about the social CFO. Before we do that, let me go ahead and do a poll. I know you're all excited to have a poll. So just to level set a little bit, just kind of curious from where you sit, which of the following departments does, whether you're in treasury or finance, do you feel you collaborate well with at your company? So as I dive through these specific areas, I'll know where I might want to spend a little bit more time in really giving you some specific tactics to use. And I think that's hardly ever done. It says, okay, we need to communicate, need to collaborate. Well, how do you do that, right? How do you build trust, right? We used to talk about the CFO as a trusted advisor, but no one ever told us what that means, right? How do you achieve that? How do you build trust? And how do you get people to share with you what you need and then get them to ask you kind of what you need to build that environment? So I'm going to go ahead and leave the polling question up for another few seconds. I'd appreciate if everyone would just take a moment and press the button. Anonymous poll here always gives us some good context. And again, I think it's going to help me focus where I spend some time with you today. So let's go ahead, give you a few more seconds here. Let's go ahead and close the polling question. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek here. So I'm glad to see that we have a great level of collaboration. I'm with accounting. That's good. Higher than I expected. Yep. And here it is, right? I know you're honest with me because sales and marketing. And so there's always this natural friction between finance and sales and marketing. And so we're going to definitely spend some time there. And I think it's been a historical thing. Even when I was in marketing, I actually started in marketing. So I was actually taught how evil finance was. And when I was in finance, I was kind of taught that sales and marketing are evil. So that doesn't get us to a very good place out of the gate. Obviously, AP and AR are incredibly important. I'd like to see those numbers be all of them. I'll be 100% because at the end of the day, we need to optimize that cash conversion cycle. And so if AP and AR don't report up through us, in my mind, they should. We need to really build those relationships and help everyone understand what the goals are, the levers that we can push, facilitate that visibility into everything so we can be making informed decisions. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time answering the polling question. So let's talk a little bit about the art and science of collaboration. And so to me, you have to have communication, but before you have collaboration. And so through communication is how you build trust. In my mind, through trust is how you get to the point of where you're collaborating. And so there's obviously an overlap here, right? So you have communication, you make connections with folks, you collaborate on content and ideas, and then you all come together to be more productive. And so a lot of times there's a marriage, right, between the content and the story. The right information at the right time is what impacts decision. And as a CFO, we need to understand what information we need to get to our departmental leaders in order for them to make better decisions. And that oftentimes means we get to know our departmental leaders. It's like, help you, help me. What do you need? Intelligence, again, is only intelligent. I call it data versus intelligence. Intelligence informs and impacts decisions. Data that doesn't do that is a waste of time and effort that could be well spent elsewhere. And so some of this is going to seem kind of soft skill, Dr. Phils, but that's a good thing because, again, we talk about soft skills in treasury and finance webinars, but we never tell you what that means. We don't really share how to communicate more effectively and give you not things to think about. Is what I believe is. So sometimes when I'm putting my content together, I'm trying to make you think a little bit. I'm trying to inspire you to ask questions and have conversations beyond the webinar. Some of these things might seem like common sense to you, but I strongly believe that these things are valuable to you. So what really matters is listening. And so listening to certain people is easier than others. People ask me that all the time. I like to talk a lot, so I work on that every day. We'll talk about that. Authenticity and honesty are really important in communication. And so some of us, when I talk about social, I don't mean everyone needs to be a stand-up comedian, because some people that would come across as inauthentic. So we have to be authentic, right? And if we're not social people by nature, we have to be honest with ourselves, and people will respond when you communicate with authenticity. Our goal is to be proactive instead of reactive. So when we see issues coming up, when we see a need, so let's just say CFO knows we're going to be making an acquisition, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, we know the company we're looking at. We might want to go to APAR sales and marketing and find out how we can support them as the dynamics of our business change, our industries change, where we do business changes, and these other things. But the other side of that is, if you are an effective communicator, people become proactive with you instead of reactive. People aren't afraid to tell you when bad news is coming, because they know you'll accept it. You're not going to punish them for bad news. You're going to let people fail and learn. So that's something we could all do as leaders and as parents, as a matter of fact. We want to make sure that we align perceptions and reality. So myself, in my business travels, I've seen in my career, especially when I was in Treasury, I had all these perceptions of what was going on, but it wasn't the reality of what others were seeing. So it's important that people understand it's not only important what you do, but how you do it as well. And this is really important. We'll talk about this more in terms of our partners, right? Maybe our partners outside, maybe our bankers, right? And our service providers. What are the expectations? Right, make sure we're aligned on those expectations, right? And then that will remove a lot of frictions. It's important that the perceptions and reality are aligned, right, between our businesses and our customers, our businesses and our suppliers. And so how do we facilitate this communication, not only from ourselves to all these other parties, but between the folks that work with us, and teach them how to do this as well. You have to be willing to have deliberative discussions versus arguing. I say certain things need to be said. There's a way they need to be said. And in my mind, arguing is when emotion becomes involved. And when it becomes to that point, we need to step away. I never condone an argument. If you feel there are emotions are going to be involved, I think that's where what you need to do is make sure that you are at least in a one-on-one environment. So let's talk about the art of listening. I am always trying to figure out where I can get some advice on this and practice. There's a source here where I've used this for quite many years. I still love these, the 10 principles of listening. And so I share this story quite often. Probably the best seminar I've ever attended, especially when I was in corporate life. It's actually the sales VP. We had an hour-long session on how to listen effectively. It was amazing. So I know there's a lot of free courses out there on LinkedIn and so forth. That's something I would recommend, not only for CFOs and treasury leaders, but also as you're trying to promote the professional development of your staff. For me, number one, probably the most important, stop talking. You need to prepare yourself to listen. So you don't want to be thinking of your answer before you stop. You need to figure out how to put your counterparty at ease. You want to start to, especially if it's in person, look at these verbal and nonverbal cues, and we'll talk about how to take a little bit of cues when you're doing written communication as well. You want to remove distractions, right? When you're having a conversation and listening, you shouldn't be multitasking. You're having a conversation with someone, you don't have your video camera on. I think you should have video camera on. If you're not, don't be working on an email to 3 other people. Sometimes you need to be patient. Know who your counterparty is. Some people aren't quite as good at getting to the point as other people, so you need to hear someone out, and that's all about listening with patience, not to just respond. You need to avoid personal prejudice, and so if you've heard something about someone, drama or so forth, give that person a chance to prove themselves to you. They probably, and I'm sure they oftentimes have something important to say. It's important that you listen to the tone of the individual, and it helps you interpret those things as you get to know people. So in my mind, you need to invest in getting to know people, and if you let people get to know you, your life will be a lot easier. And you need to listen for ideas and not just words. So pick up the ideas. That may be where the value lies in the conversation. And let's watch for those nonverbal communications. And so again, Communication is key before collaboration. Listening, to me, is a skill that needs to be taught, and it's something that we should invest our time in. I want to talk about a little bit about listening to email. This has become even more important right over the past few years. And I'll also say, or listening to a Slack message, or however, WhatsApp, or however you communicate. And this would have been good for me to know earlier in my career, because I was not giving some of these tips, and sometimes they can do damage to your relationships, which are important, right? If we want trusted relationships, we need to make sure that we're communicating effectively and that there's nothing that's misinterpreted, if at all possible. So control your instincts to write a response before you even finish reading an email. So one of my old bosses, I love him. My first boss, he was infamous for only reading the preview line. So he would read about 3 lines of the email, then he'd start writing this terse email back. And so I had to be the one that had to ask him. And luckily he thought I was halfway humorous. I told him, please do not respond to my email until you read the whole thing, because a lot of times the answer is there. Talked about this earlier. Don't multitask when you're reading email. Be focused. And then for me, in an email, I always try and avoid blame and finger pointing, and try and offer solutions, and then be patient. If you're looking for an answer in the email and you don't get the answer that you want, find something positive. Don't ask with the angry tone. And a good thing is maybe to pick up the phone and make a call. So if something's really important to you and it needs to get done, and you wanted to may be convenient and have it by email, but you really need it, is it more productive to pick up the phone and really make sure you're on the same page, or clarify things, or you're going to get mad with an email? And then some people, anyone responds to negativity the same way. It makes you take a step back, right? And so just think about that, right? What's the cost of doing that? What's the cost of picking up the phone, having a pleasant tone, and say, John, I was looking for this. Was that in there? Is there something I can help you with? And so that emails can be very dangerous. And so teaching people how to listen to emails can be important for you. Again, listen to the tone like you do in person, what's said and what's not said. And this is kind of the golden rule of email listening, which everyone can use at their careers, especially. I have 2 kids that are in college right now, telling them as they go through their internships, their first job, anytime you receive an email that evokes a strong emotional response for you, wait 30 minutes to respond, and get a trusted colleague, maybe your spouse, to read your response, to have the right tone and content. Once you hit that send button, it's not easy to take that back. Yes, people are understanding, some of us more than others, but that's kind of the golden rule there for email. And then when communication, we want to build trust. So again, some specifics about how do you build trust, especially as a CFO. We're not really known as social people. Invest in getting to know someone. So find that you may have a common interest. Maybe you have kids that play the same sports. Maybe you're both runners. So invest in getting to know someone. And if someone is a little prickly, if you're observant, you can see someone else who gets along with the person, that you want to get to know. And so see how they relate to them well. This is hard for some of us. Let someone get to know you, right? When someone gives you an opportunity for a conversation, don't just say hi, delve in a little bit. It's not always productive to talk about the weather, but start somewhere. I talked about being proactive, align on expectations, and then you shouldn't be afraid to communicate your failures to your team and your colleagues. And that's all about being a human being 24/7. If people see you as being an authentic human being and realizing that you fail and you're going to learn from your mistakes, that's going to really go miles into building that trust, into getting the proactive communication, which is often key in taking advantage of opportunities, but also avoiding issues or mitigating problems as well. So another thing about communicating, I call it the communicating with impact. And so there's really, I found some interesting content around the art of storytelling. And so, for CFOs and finance and treasury folks, we're often presenting numbers But in making our point, we need to learn how to tell stories. People like stories. I'm telling you a story in this webinar. Hopefully you're seeing that story. So I've just included some content here. You can dive in after the webinar, but it's really interesting of these different story plots. So if you're going to give a presentation to the board or to your team, something went right, something went wrong, maybe something's gone off the rails and you want to get people back to be motivated. And so there are what we call first, a big category is warning star plots. And so there's a plot neglect reality, right? Maybe you see your business going, maybe you're growing too fast. This is what's going to happen if we disregard the red flags. And then we call this ignore the prize. Talk about changing with the time. So I actually use this quite a bit when I was delivering webinars focused to some accounts payable professionals and really telling them that they shouldn't be afraid of losing their job because of automation. What they really should do is take this as an opportunity to redefine the value proposition, right, of being an accounts payable professional. Take advantage of the opportunity so you can change with the times and enjoy your job more. And if you don't, then yes, it's possible that you may need to look for another career. Everybody loves the comeback story. And so sharing where you have made a mistake and then how you found your way back to the right path there. And then just talk about, this is probably my favorite, fall forward, talk about, lessons learned from failure and how to value failure. So let people understand the value of failing and then teach people how to fall forward until you've accepted failure and realize it's not the end of the world. It can really derail productivity, especially. And so tell people that it's not like you don't want to learn from your failure. Learn from your failure, figure out what happened and why, and do everything you can to not make sure it doesn't happen again. And it's going to make you stronger. So those are warning plots. And then we have the motivating story plots, which people probably would associate me more, passion and energy. And so answer the call, right? We're all going towards this together. A lot of times you'll see CEOs, as you see as effective communicators, they tell you the story where the company's going. And as a CFO, what you want to do is communicate the vision. This is the office of the CFO. This is what we're doing. This is why. Answer the call. Come with us, right? We're going to take over the galaxy, right? And this is how we're going to do it. Get people excited. Answer the call. Get called. Pursue the reward, right? Tell people the benefit. What's the reward? What's the value in overcoming the obstacle? And so this is valuable to CFOs I talked to as we started to go through the impacts of COVID. I asked them, how do you keep your team motivated? And then, of course, this is too simple. Take it away from the medical side. Crisis brings opportunity. Variability brings opportunity. So overcoming the obstacle for many companies led them to increase market share, led people to innovate, led people to understand the value from working from home. And then anyone that's been in sports at all and has been a coach, the no pain, your gain. And then savor the victory. Talk about success through teamwork. But I will caution you on this. We used to always joke when I worked at a startup. We would go, okay, we reached this goal. Celebrate. Okay, you give yourself about 5 seconds, right, to celebrate, and then you move on. So I tell my kids all the time, the finish line is there. Run through the finish line all the time. Sit there, don't sit there, just take a minute, put your arms up and keep running through that finish line. Let's talk about a little bit about virtual meetings. I'm sure you've all seen these given what we've all had to do with COVID, but just a few things to point out. One of them I point out is have meetings with purpose, and this can be social. So let's just make sure we're not all too comfortable by scheduling all these meetings. I do have a lot of content if you're interested in how to avoid meetings that lower your IQ, and then communicate with purpose at your meeting. And then when you're on camera and watch people, pay attention to your nonverbal gestures. And so let's just switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about your finance team. So let's time for a polling question, so I can take a breath here. So just curious, in terms of your team, right? We saw #1 priority for CFOs, what was it? Team and talent. So your company going to invest more in the professional development of your employees in your department? Is it more in 2022? It should say 2022. I'm sorry. More than in 2021. The same as usual every year, less than in 2021, or you don't formally track or manage. And so if we're going to expect more of our teams, right? I've just completed some research, and specifically for my treasury leaders out there, we saw that the responsibilities and strategic role of treasury was increasing in 2022, and I think we've seen the same from others' research. And so we need to make sure that they have the resources, right, to be successful for them. We're going to ask more of them. We're going to give them more of a seat at the table. We need to make sure that they are ready to take advantage of that. So let's go ahead and take a quick peek at the results here. All right. So good to see that we got 41% more than we saw last year. 36%, that could be good if you really invest in this every year. Less is it may be understandable because you may have really done quite a jump from previous years. But then those of you that don't formally track or manage, I would strongly encourage you to do that. And so part of getting the best out of your team is investing in the professional development of your team. I would say empowering them. I interviewed a CFO for a podcast. Now I think it was 2 years ago. She told me she formally looks at and manages the professional brands of her team and makes them own their skill sets, makes them own their LinkedIn profile. So I think that's incredibly important. You need to get each team member to be vested in their own professional development, get them to communicate to you what they want, and you can decide if it's what you need. You need to understand the skill set of your teams as well, what you need and how you want to fill those needs as well. So again, I encourage everyone, and there's a lot of different ways to invest in professional development. We're seeing a lot more virtual opportunities. There's really a drive to communities out there, and LinkedIn has a lot of free courses. Courses on YouTube from universities, just about anything, and a lot of those things that you can find for free. If you have something you really want your team to do and you can't find it for free, send me an email and I'm pretty sure we can find you something. So how do you build your finance team, right? We talk about hiring the A players, and so A players can mean different things to different companies. And so what are your A players, right? What are the skills that my team, whether it's finance or treasury, needs for me to be able to meet and exceed our goals, right, as a department? And so you got to figure out what your needs are, right? What are the gaps? What are your team dynamics? How do they fit? How do your team fit together? If you want to hire, let's say, do they have the skills? How will they fit into your team? What about the culture? And then do they fit with your style? And so I've had a few webinars where I've had a panel of CFOs talking about this very topic, and all of them and I was glad to hear they say they have to kind of fit into my style as a leader, whether that's especially collaborative, communicative. And so all these things are important, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but hiring A players and then how to keep them, we'll talk about that as well. And so hopefully you'll ask for the presentation. There's an awful lot of content in here, an awful lot to think about. So let's go ahead and let's talk about skills that matter most to deliver results. Found a really interesting report from Workday. And so today, which emerging topic are you prioritizing more with investment and support? So where are the CFOs investing more in the professional development? We have diversity and inclusion are pretty high. ESG. So I would hope to see more in cybersecurity, and then the orange part is the biggest gap in addressing. And so if you start to look at diversity and inclusion, that's really obviously a soft skill issue, and so that's something that us as CFOs and finance leaders might not have a lot of experience and acumen with, and where we need some help. ESG is just something that's new. and a different way to think of, especially on the environmental side, but also on the governance side, which sometimes doesn't get enough attention. We'll talk about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in another webinar. Just always want to share with you some benchmarking and some reports that you might want to take a look at. So that's just kind of teased me up to talk about, right? We want to hire the A players. What skills matter most? What are other CFOs and treasury leaders and other leaders across the office of CFO identifying as the skills that matter most, and where are they prioritizing? Top 2 skills from that same Workday report. Important. Number 1 was familiarity with business technology. So that technology acumen, and look at me, I got pretty good. Analytics and data storytelling was 41%. And so just some things to think about, right? Think about the impact that you want to need, the skills that you need, the impact you want your department to have, and then where do you prioritize these skills? And then if you have these skills gaps that exist, how are you going to fill them? Are you going to train up, or are you going to go outside and add someone else to your team? And these are based on my experience. Have conversations all the time. I've moderated many roundtables for CFOs and treasury leaders. As many of you know, I'm dabbling in recruiting, so I'm really in tune, especially on the treasury side. Have conversations with CFO space as well. Skills that impact performance, and that I hear are important to folks that are hiring, whether they're CFOs or CEOs. Interpersonal skills, relationship building, effective communication, right? Analytical abilities, problem solving. In my opinion, I should have moved up. Passion for learning and embrace change is something that I've heard, especially the last couple years. And then 10 is relevant industries. I think what that does is it gives you the ability to collaborate if you have that knowledge. And so as I'm looking at my skill set to make sure I'm staying on top of my game, I would list my 10 most important qualities. I would rate my team. Where are we at individually, and then as a team, right? Where do we need to get better, and do we even have the skill set in-house? So you want to put some structure around this area of professional development, skills that you have, skills that you need, and then have goals getting from A to B. How do we measure the improvement in those skills? And then as far as optimizing performance, we always talk about employee engagement. This is a whole other webinar, and so we can talk about this, just a thing that keep you thinking. You work with HR on this, of course, and your other departmental leaders. You define engagement. You have surveys of your employees. If you earn that trust, you can get honest answers. You want to create metrics, right? And then you keep improving, right? Manage the metrics, adjust the metrics, and then you figure out what engagement means. And engagement, you need input from the folks that you are trying to engage, right? What does engagement mean to them? What does it mean to them to feel that they're valued, to feel like every day they feel like they want to do their best every day? What makes them tick? What makes them optimize their professional impact? So you've probably seen this slide before. If you come to my webinars, you're going to see it again. This is one of my favorite slides, how you optimize your team performance. This is the culture I would love to create. And this is a culture as someone looking for a job. If we're going through the great resignation, this is what I deserve. This is what every person deserves, right? They deserve a good boss. You want communication, constructive feedback. You want to have an environment of accountability. You want your people to be accountable in the personal departmental level. You want to make sure everyone understands his or her value to the company, right? And this goes across your own employees, right? Wouldn't it be great if you wanted to make sure that your sales leader understands his professional value, right? You want to make sure that you offer opportunities for professional and personal growth as well. So CFOs in our world are tasked with optimizing performance, right? Across the enterprise. Let's get our house in order first. Can we look at ourselves in the mirror and say that we are invested in the performance of each of our employees? What are we doing to make that happen. Lessons learned in-house are lessons that will serve us well across the enterprise, right? And with those beyond the enterprise. So let's talk a little bit more about optimizing performance, talk about team dynamics a little bit. Something that I've had to have delved into the last few years is there's a lot of different indexes out here, to each their own. I'm fascinated with one called the GC index. What it is, it's helping people understand where they naturally want to make an impact and contribute. It can be used to look at someone individually or as a team, and it helps you relate to others also as you understand where people are coming from. It's really something that I find is consumable, and I've had several CFO case studies where they've used the index. And so it's really looking to, okay, where does someone find their natural energy? And then how do we give that person opportunities to function where they are best? So we're not trying to change everyone, right? We're trying to give them the opportunity to do what they do best, find their passion. And if we look at it as an aggregate level, it helps us maybe identify areas where we have a shortcoming in our team. And as we look to hire, how do we best fill that out? Real quickly, starting in the upper right, we have game changers. These are the out of the box thinkers. You want something to replace the wheel, not this is Ernie. The strategist on your team or in life is the person that puts structure around those ideas. The implementer makes it happen. The polisher makes it great. And the playmaker in the middle is the person who I would say is the referee. It's not about imposing your will. It's about getting everyone to work together and collaborate together as well. So I'm sharing this with you because it's something that you can understand. It gives you a way to look at the dynamics of your team that's not as complicated as Briggs-Myers or something else, something you can share with your team and they will understand it. And then it helps people not only internally, but like if I'm a game changer, it helps me understand, oh, so-and-so is a polisher. So how can we communicate with less friction? Again, I'll just share myself. Ernie is a game changer. So that's no one's surprise, but I look at the other areas. And so as I start, it helps me like figure out, oh, okay, well, I probably need to delegate. How do I balance myself out? Also, how do I align with my strategic partners? Most of you will note I'm being much more collaborative this year. So how do I align myself with other organizations that might be more in the strategy frame? They might be implementing things I want to implement. And so it helps me maximize my professional impact and helps me help others to do the same. As a social CFO, it helps me understand how to manage my team dynamics, but also how to better relate with everyone across the enterprise and beyond without having a PhD in psychology. And so how do you unleash your social power? Let's step outside of finance for a few minutes. Some of these things you may have seen because it's all about communication to get to collaboration. Excuse me. You should get to know your colleagues in a way that's authentic to you. If there's lunches and opportunities, take advantage of them. As much as it hurts, let them get to know you. A lot of times, if you just go to gatherings and listen, you will learn an awful lot. You don't have to be involved in every conversation, just learn and watch. And understand the value of your relationship to your colleagues. So you have to figure out, be a little strategic about it. If I'm in finance, how can I be valuable to someone in sales and marketing? And then you should communicate your expectations and let them know what to expect from you. So in Treasury, we have internal customers. Why don't we have a conversation, right? Isn't this a novel idea? How can I help you, right? Or just go up to a colleague and say, what are your biggest challenges that you face? And they'll tell you. And then guess what? You'll probably have some ideas on how to help them alleviate their challenges. Now, as much as people don't like to admit it, people don't mind complaining a little bit, right? If you get the ball rolling with folks. And so with that trusted relationship, right, you can open those doors or you can build your own doors and you can kick those doors in, but you have to invest in that. Again, letting people get to know you is important. We talked about listening. Learn the professional languages of your colleagues. It shows that you care about what they're doing and you understand the dynamics of how your departments can work together. Again, ask them to help, ask them what their biggest work challenges are. Be authentic in your communications. If something's going on, so I had a CFO tell me, he asked people straight up most of the time, people don't like finance. What is it that you don't like about finance, or what don't you like about finance? So you kind of take that away from them, make a joke out of it, or I might come across as XYZ. However, this is really who I knock down those walls. Communicating bad news proactively is just something I can't stress enough, which is going to build your trust. Is it easy? No. Are you going to maybe get a negative reaction? Yes, but you're going to build that trust. Now, I'll caveat it with this. If you're going to communicate that bad news proactively, and you had it was somewhat under your purview, or they think it was, let's have an answer ready, right? Let's have a course of action. That helps quite a bit. And then if you can get colleagues who have no fear in communicating bad news to you, isn't that amazing? And so some of the reasons we get some friction between sales and the CFO. Sales will know that a big sales deal fell through, right? They don't notify the CFO. Guess what? We miss our numbers. Guess what? Who's the CFO mad at? Well, he's probably mad at sales, even though it's not their fault they lost sales, but he's the one that has to fall on the sword to the CEO and explain to him, right? It's not going to go to sales, he's going to go to the CFO. Yeah, I know they missed their number, but I didn't know that we did miss our number because we had to communicate it to the street, and we're going to lose our value there. So we want that proactiveness in that news. So some specific tips beyond finance. So let's take a look. Again, I guess what I've seen in your answers confirmed it. We have a little issues with sales, marketing, and HR as well. Look in the mirror. If we have inherent bias there, some of us were brought up this way in our professional lives. We shouldn't look as marketing and HR as overhead. We should be willing to measure ourselves relative to our internal customers, and let's get some metrics and understand. And let's figure out how we can impact sales, marketing, and HR with our skill set. How can we help create a culture of data-driven decision-making? And what does that do? Data-driven decision-making mitigates bias from sales and marketing, who traditionally have seen success through their intuition. Well, your intuition may well be right, but let's give people the tools to make sure that their intuition is right, right? It's also nice to know, see, my intuition is fantastic. This is backed up by the data, and teach people how to leverage and develop their intuition. Wouldn't you love to develop? I guess it's not quite intuition, but it's a combination. Intuition, right? Data-driven intuition. There's a new word for you. I just trademarked it. Again, with our skill sets, we can define and communicate a common language. So let's talk about success. What does success look like across all departments, right? Let's have a common language. Let's put some metrics behind that. Certain things naturally go across departments, especially things like employee engagement as well. And then we can also be helpful in setting the standards for how data quality is ensured, data analysis. So when data is handled and used and analyzed, we can make sure that everyone's on the same page. We're doing forecasting. It's all the same. Let's take a lead on that. Again, you ask them what they need. Let's have clear lines of communication and education in terms of pricing, decisions. Let's work through things. An example on this, which I think I've seen in the last few years, is in terms of the customer, right? At the end of the day, we want to deliver the most value possible to the customer, make sure that we're delivering the value, we're delivering value to them, and that they are getting the value. The perceived value is equal to the actual value. So as we start to open up those lines, everyone that has any communication or interaction with the customer, there should be visibility into that. Every interaction that is had with a supplier, we should have visibility into that so we can all see the dynamics of those relationships, so there's no miscommunication. If we want to optimize the value of each relationship, we need to have visibility into what's going on. Let's not blindside people. If the customer is going to miss a payment, and then you got to let Treasury know or let the CFO know, right? There might be a reason for that. Let's not have collections calling a customer and bashing on them and berating them, right? All these relationships are important. And then sometimes you have to go this way. I like the role play. I like more of the improv as well. But these are things that you might want to do, think about as well. With marketing, help facilitate an understanding of customer and prospect behaviors. I've done CFO research on things that are going to really drive success, and almost every year, what they really wanted was a better understanding of customer and prospect behaviors. We talked about that framework of ROI. I would ensure there's an analytics guru in marketing these days. There usually is, but it's good to have someone in every team. Someone actually told me how they had internal interns and they rotated in and out. So marketing had an intern in finance, and finance had an intern in marketing, and that's a way to really build that trust and see what's actually going on, and facilitating the collaboration. And then also with marketing, it's good, since we are purviewed with risk management, make sure they're leveraging social media channels and understand that the risk exposures there and alignments there. So that gives us some specific tips for marketing. With sales, I think I touched on this a little bit. Let's get more involved in customer relationships, and let's see if the CFO can be more involved in not just playing a referee for customer issues. Can we facilitate CFO to CFO communications with our biggest customers? And then help them understand how to engage and retain their most valuable customers by helping them get visibility into all these interactions. And then if we're going to do customer surveys through customer success, let's work with them on that as well. Help them and manage the success, the health of sales pipeline. I mean, I see that as something that I still hear is an area of big need, the health of the sales pipeline. So what technology is out there to do that? Again, if you're CFO, you're on top of this. So let's see what they need. This is probably my big one, 360 view of visibility, each customer, right? So they have the right technology, visibility, and influence on each interaction with the customer. So make sure every interaction with the customer matters. Make sure there's a desired action with each customer and track that. And help them make sure they define and communicate the value that your company delivers to your customer. And that would also be facilitating the collaboration between sales and marketing. And for me, I know it's not the same, but allowing there to be a blurred line between sales and marketing. What about more of a blurry line between marketing, sales, and finance? Wow, that'd be quite a world, wouldn't it? With HR, I think we've all had our issues with HR, but help them understand the need to educate and train each manager how to embrace the dynamics of their team, their multi-generational workforce. We talked about helping them that they can leverage, access, and adapt and cultivate the skill sets and performance framework of their team. Just a concept I'll kind of go through a little, not at all, just give you a reference. There's a concept called human capital financial statements that I don't know if they've had a lot of traction. I think they're incredibly interesting. But again, what we're trying to do is figure out how we can help HR with our skill set. And one of the ways I really see this is in the professional development, managing that, right, putting metrics around it. As the CFO, what we want to do is impact performance across the enterprise, and we have to partner with HR to help HR. Every person is an asset, right? Professional development is not an asset. I shouldn't say that, is a person. The most valuable resource that we have is our people. Again, this is too dense for our time together today, but happy to walk you through this. Human Capital Management Institute, they have some interesting content and surveys there. And so what about beyond the enterprise? As the CFO, how do we collaborate there with our bank partners, especially in treasury? We should understand the RAROC model of each partner. That's a whole webinar. We need to endeavor to educate the banks about our business, finance, and treasury opportunities. Ask them what they need to meet our expectations. For our banks, that's about being a good customer, right? For our customers, let's just call them suppliers, being a good supplier, right? Understand how finance impacts the customer experience. Collaborate with sales and find out how we can support customer relationships. A lot of times finance is thought as evil. Ooh, Mr. No, I'm not talking to finance. They're going to tell me no on terms. They're going to tell me no. I want to make a deal. They're going to tell me no on our country limits. Well, let's we have to work on that if that's our reputation. Really educating them on how our decisions are made are incredibly important, and help them do that analysis themselves. And so it's a great conversation starter. The sales guy goes to the CFO and says, okay, I know we have a country limit of XYZ. However, we add this we have this new customer here. It's really going to help us get our market position. So going forward, it's going to grow our sales by XYZ, and make that business case. Excuse me. Suppliers, how can we be better communicate and collaborate to understand how finance impacts the supplier experience and how we can support supplier relationships. And so collaborating with customers, from the CFO or treasury leader perspective, the better relationship with customers, the more control you have over how and when you're paid. And with your suppliers, you have more control of how and when you make payments. Better relationships with suppliers and customers and bank partners give you strategic agility, which is incredibly important in any environment as things change. We've had a few recent examples of the world, the bottom of the world, the whole, and seismic shift of the whole Earth's crust. But those are things that relationships. That's when you really see the value of those relationships. And then with your professional network, right? Your colleagues, your peers, up and down the office, the CFO, fellow CFOs, controllers, treasury managers, your treasurers, your treasury manager, treasury analysts. How you communicate with them, whether it's within conferences, seminars, webinars, groups, online communities. So ask how you can help your connections. Stay tuned to what your connections need. Proactively share information with your connections. The easiest way to do that, I think, is on LinkedIn. Support LinkedIn contributions, communicate how you can collaborate with them, and don't let your relationship momentum come to a halt. Have a whole conference about optimizing your professional development, which is on March 17th for Treasury and Finance leaders. So a lot more to come on that front, especially around managing, communicating, and building your professional brand. Let's talk a little bit about putting some science around this thing we call collaboration and being a social CFO. Real high-level things I'll share from the Business Partnering Institute, businesspartneringinstitute.org. They have some great content. Anders Lou Lindberg, who is a key principal there, he's been a partner of mine for quite some time. So they have some great context. He went through a tremendous project at Maersk, and he continues to work with companies who want to really formally invest in what we call business partnering, which is really about facilitating collaboration across the enterprise, and from his perspective, leading that from finance. And so really what we've seen in the office of the CFO is that we've had to change the mindset of especially AP and AR just being looked at, right, as cost centers. Well, let's change that mindset to how they can offer value. And so it's really a mindset, right? Giving people information, helping them figure out how do you drive performance management, you build those relationships, communicate with impact. What is it that we want to do as a social CFO impacting performance across the enterprise? We don't want to dictate decisions. We want to influence decisions. We want to offer the technology, support, and framework to influence decisions that optimize business performance. And so the how, the what to the why, and of course it's a circle. And this slide is just really that finance is just uniquely positioned to identify and create opportunities. I would say, especially in treasury, we know all of what's going on in the business in terms of the mechanics on the supplier side and the customer side and the funding side, and as a CFO on the technology side. So we really are in a unique position to identify and help create those opportunities for collaboration that exist, which we need to have visibility to identify those. And there's a lot on here. It's just trying to show you some of the value drivers here in all these different ways that we can look to collaborate, and where we have opportunities across to lead from finance. Yeah, we have suppliers, we have customers, we have subsets, we have resources, process, the whole value chain there for our company there. And so we can start to put together specific opportunities, again, just to give you something to make you think a little bit about the structure that you might want to look at. And then a structured framework is really the science is about why, where, what, and how of what a business partner does. I would say a business partner is someone who collaborates across the enterprise, identifies opportunities, empowers the performance of other departments and individuals across the enterprise. And so I love these activities. So especially from our finance data report, we get to analysis, insights, and influence and impact. And so the social CFO in today's world is successful. We need to influence and impact performance across the enterprise. In order to influence and impact performance across the enterprise, we need to have trusted relationships across the enterprise with departmental leaders. We need to have and build trusted relationships with those outside of the walls of our company, with our suppliers and customers and our technology partners and our banks, but also with our peers as well, so they can keep us abreast of what they're doing to optimize the impact they have at their companies. And then just talking about how this actually is put into practice a little bit more. Again, businesspartneringinstitute.org just talks about foundation, what that looks like, the development, and then the execution. There are some really interesting case studies there. It might not be right for your company, but it's an interesting read and helps you think and put things into place that are at the right size for your company. So let's go ahead and get to our key takeaways. We've had fast and furious, a lot of content. Hopefully you've been able to latch on to some key takeaways other than these, but I think these are incredibly valuable. CFO success in today's world and going forward is driven by technology, relationships, and innovation. That's what we're expected. Technology allows us to mitigate the time spent on non-value-add activities across the enterprise. Relationships allow us to understand the needs of others across the enterprise, what they need to be most successful and more productive. And innovation in terms of technology and relationships allow us to create competitive advantage in terms of how we treat our employees and how we serve our customers. I think CFOs need to empower success within and beyond enterprise. I wouldn't say they need to, they have to. That's the expectations. I would say, again, I would look to have a strategy as a social CFO on the technology side to mitigate the time spent on non-value-add activities by all company employees. All departments should be keeping track of where time is spent and looking for ways to have more time spent. It's not about necessarily reducing headcount. It's about time spent on strategic value. CFOs need to invest in their own professional development, most of us, soft skills, and also ensuring there's adequate investment in the professional development of each and every member of the Office of the CFO and helping people take their own accountability. And to me, CFOs need to facilitate a company culture of accountability, innovation, and business agility. I'm going to go ahead and launch our final polling question here for you today. Before I bid you adieu today, I want to once again thank my strategic partner for today's webinar, Tipalti. They certainly share my commitment to thought leadership. Again, look for much more coming from Tipalti and I on the future Office of Finance. I'm looking forward to doing some great things with Tipalti this year. I would appreciate your consideration in taking just a second or two to answer the polling question so I can help support Tipalti. As everyone knows, I do not charge for anything that I do, and the only way I'm able to do that is to find partners that share my commitment to thought leadership, such as Tipalti. Also want to remind you, the Treasury Professional Development Virtual Forum is coming on March 17th. If you haven't done that, you'll be asked in the survey if you'd like me to get you registered for that. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close our final polling question. And with that, I thank you so much, everyone, for your valuable time. I value each and every one of you. Make the rest of your day great, everyone.